sincere through the sacrifices and such nature, and therefore God would forgive. This is very clear. And it was kind of interesting to me, the last statement of the Old Testament. The last statement that God leaves as a bidding farewell of the Old Testament, which is in the book of Malachi. In Malachi, in the last chapter, God says something that's very profound. It says, I do not change. This is the statement in Malachi. I do not change, therefore the sons of Jacob are not consumed. What that means is God is saying, as a bidding farewell message to the Old Testament, He's telling the children of Israel, I don't change my mind, I don't change my opinion. I'm not someone who wakes up and feels one way one day and another way another day, and this is the reason I have not destroyed all of you. This is exactly what God says. Because I made a covenant with you, change, this is the reason I have not destroyed you. So this is my frame of mind going into the New Testament. And I begin in the New Testament, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And to give you the historical, critical, and textual analysis of the New Testament, of the first 4 books of the New Testament, which is known as the Gospels, or even the first 3, which is known as the Synoptic Gospels, would take weeks and months and years to give you all of the issues that arise just textually throughout the New Testament. But what I want to do is give you the message that I found. And there was a way that I read it that allowed me to see something that I would have never seen before, I never had saw before, and not a lot of people see because of the way they read it. Most people read the New Testament, Matthew beginning to end, Mark beginning to end, Luke beginning to end, John beginning to end. And what you get through that type of reading is you get 4 stories, seemingly from 4 different people telling the same story from a different vantage point. This is the general belief. But there was a way I learned to read it from the textual critic professor at Bob Jones University that gave me a completely different image, and that was the linear method of reading. And the linear method of reading is that you read the same story out of Matthew, and then you go to Mark and you find the same story and you read it. You go to Luke, you find the same story and you read it. You go to John, you find the same story and you read it. And you do that with every single story that is throughout the life of Jesus Christ. When you read it in that method, you see a completely different picture than what you would normally see. You quickly will come to realize through that type of reading that it is not a story, one story told 4 different vantage points. It's 4 completely different stories told by 4 completely different things, who saw and thought 4 different completely things, and whose meaning of Jesus' life was 4 completely different things. But nevertheless, what I wanted to focus on was Jesus' life. What did He teach? What did He preach? What was His message? And what did He want to give to humanity? And I found out that it was this. And I've been doing this lecture for almost 8 years now, and the challenge still stands for someone to give me another message of Jesus Christ in as clear terminology as what He gave us, and it's not there. Jesus taught about God. This is what He taught about God, that God was one. In the New Testament, Jesus Christ teaches, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God is one." He quotes this out of Deuteronomy. "Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God is one." He taught that God, the Father, whom He referred to as the Father, which is not something reminiscent of only Himself. This is the way that the Jews referred to God, being the Father of all creation. He is the Creator. Jesus referred to God, the Father, as someone that was greater than Himself. He even says that I have to go to the Father, for the Father is greater than I. He said, and he quoted, he made an analogy. He said that the servant is not greater than the master, nor is the Son greater than the Father. He was equating that God is the greatest thing in creation. And once a man came to Jesus and asked Jesus, "O good master, tell me how to inherit eternal life." And Jesus responded his question with a question. He said, "Why do you callest me good?" And I'm going to give you the quotation from the Old King James. "Why thou callest me good? For there is none that is good but one, and that's God." And if you really look into the Greek documents of this verse, what Jesus really said in that terminology, He said that, "Why do you call me good? For there is only one source of good." This is what He said. There is only one source of good, and that is God. That the only source of good in the creation is God. So I'm starting to see through Jesus' teachings, whom I believed was the second personage of the Trinity. I thought Jesus was God, but I'm beginning to very quickly see that Jesus is spending a lot of time to not disassociate himself with God, but to distinguish himself from the Creator. That he was indeed, as Jesus 17 verse 3, which is